welcome back to the channel. It's been a few weeks. I'm so sorry. I moved things and I shouldn't have, and now things are crazy. One moment. Here we go. Okay, there we go. We're back at it. So, it's been a few weeks. With the holidays, I didn't film. And then, if you watch my goals video, I will have mentioned this. I meant to film last week, but we found out on Monday that we had lost some family members unexpectedly. I don't know why I said it that way. We lost some family members unexpectedly. And so the week went completely over to cleaning, taking care of things. We're the executors on an estate now, and we're trying to get it squared away and finished up and everything. So the week was effectively gone. In terms of like reading, filming, that sort of thing. But this is going to be my holiday reads, everything that I read through Christmas and through the new year, which wasn't a lot. And I thought I'd catch y'all up, and I'm going to try to get back on schedule moving forward. I would recommend getting a drink, maybe turning me on in the background, because I have a few things to talk about. I am going to try to make it quick, though, so let's get right into it. Let's start with, I believe, the first thing that I have in my journal that I finished that I didn't get to talk about, and that was I finished the biography of Dolly Parton, Ain't Nobody's Fool, by Martha Ackman. I really enjoyed this. If you are a fan of Dolly and you are interested in her and also interested in where she comes from, so this corner of East Tennessee, this would be a great place to start. It's very readable, it's very friendly, and she really, not only does she talk about Dolly's history, but she ties it neatly into some fun history of the area. So I actually learned some things about my area where I live and where Dolly has been. She grew up about 200 miles from me, so not that far. She used to perform as a young child in a city that I am in almost daily. So it's very fun. It was a very fun read. It's not very long. There are pictures in the finished copy, and it's actually very pretty, this gray and pink. I really like the color on it. I read an e-arc, and I enjoyed it so much I did go out and buy my own copy. So that will tell you how much I liked it. So this was great. Like I said, if you are a Dolly fan or you want to know more about where she came from, how she's impacted the area, this is one I would recommend picking up. I haven't read any other Dolly memoirs or books about her. I'm just very familiar with her. I have her Behind the Seams book over here on this shelf. I might pick it up in the next couple months and read it, so we'll see. That was the first thing I finished. Like I said, I'm trying to make these quick and easy. The second thing I finished, let me dig it out of my stack here, is Peerless Volume 1. This is the first book in a historical fantasy Dawn May series, and this is about, and I am going to say these names very wrong, and I am very sorry, I didn't look them up. Feng Zhao and nope, I'm gonna have to put them on the screen, are two men. The leader of the Zoyu Bureau and the Zhejian Bureau. There are two investigators, and they come to this city one of them is coming to investigate a murder and a piece of missing goods. The other is there working on something else, but he gets drawn into the investigation as well. They end up crossing paths because our one individual here, he decides that he's seeking out this Buddhist monk who leads this temple, and he says, I think you have something to do with this murder. Turns out that is our other investigator. He's in disguise at this temple trying to get information. And the relationship they establish as they work to investigate what's happened is very, very funny. They are just bickering constantly. They are like two angry cats. This same author wrote Thousand Autumns, and in that we had what I felt was a true black cat, white cat relationship. This is two black cats. This is two guys who don't like each other, and they just go at it constantly. They are arguing, they're sniping, they're spitting on each other when they're arguing. At one point, one of them vomits on the other one. It sounds grosser and meaner than it is, but it's like he was sick and he goes, oh, you're not that sick, and he vomits on him. Things like that. They're very funny. That made me cackle several times. Just the quirky back and forth. I don't know if this was written after Thousand Autumns, like in the writer's chronology. I don't know if she finished Thousand Autumns before she started this. In the world, this takes place 13 years after Thousand Autumns. But this is, I can already tell a bit of an improvement in the author's style. So that's fantastic. I'm enjoying that a lot. And this is just a straight up historical fantasy mystery at this point. There's nothing else going on. The two rival agencies competing, and we do have some crossover characters. So some of my favorite side characters from Thousand Autumns have actually shown up in this, which made me very happy. So yes, I am enjoying this a lot. I want more non-May like this and less like Grandmaster. I know that's kind of a hot take, but that is where we are. I want to go into volume 2 as soon as possible, but my buddy read partner, she's also got a lot on her plate. She's preparing for nursing school, so I don't know when I'll get to it, but hopefully very, very soon. So that will be, like I said, hopefully in a wrap up soon. I have both the ebook and the physical copy. I'm so excited about it. The next thing I finished was an e-arc of a short novella, and this is called And Side by Side They Wander by Molly Tanzer. I have read Molly Tanzer in the past and really enjoyed their work, so I picked this up on the chance that, you know, it's short, it might be something new. And I haven't read any of their work since, oh gosh, maybe over 6 or 7 years ago. I think the last book, I believe they wrote Vermilion, and I read that for a book club many, many, many years ago. So it's been a while. This is a novella about a woman who is on a expedition with another set of not all humans. Some of them aren't all humans, but they are going to recover human artwork that has been taken by an alien species and stored in a giant museum for safekeeping, because at the time that the alien species arrived on Earth, we had effectively destroyed the planet, and because we are an art creating species, they said we have to preserve the artwork, and in return we'll give you a means to save your planet and to stabilize your societies. Humanity agreed. They took a bunch of our art, they gave us this stuff, and it's been many, many years. We've stabilized, the Earth is better, and now humanity wants their art back, but the aliens are like, I don't think so. So this, if you're keeping up, is basically the idea of, the example they put in their acknowledgements was the, I think they're called the Argonian marbles, but you could, any ancient artwork, Britain and other countries have a habit of taking art, storing it in a museum, and then not giving it back to the country that it belongs to. This is very common if you're at all familiar with like art history or art. This is like old hat news, right? It's unfortunate, but it is a constant struggle that many nations deal with. So Molly Tanzer is looking at this from a much broader scope with aliens and in space, and it's a heist novel that they're going to go and steal this artwork back from this giant museum. Now, I didn't like this very much. It was fine. It was okay. One, I have an art degree from college, so like this is a topic I'm very familiar with. So a lot of the messaging here was something that again, familiar with. It's something I have an opinion on. It's something I agree with. So it felt a little, not simplistic, but it was just, it didn't add anything to the story for me. I didn't learn much from it, so that was unfortunate. That would have been fine had I enjoyed the characters, and the characters I really didn't enjoy. Our main point of view character, this individual, has been wildly in love with a clone of I believe they were like a billionaire who tried to change the world, and he created his own clones. And this clone that she's in love with is effectively, has no real empathy. He has no attachment to her, but she is obsessively in love with him. And it even in the text talks about how if love is not returned, at what point does it become an obsession as opposed to unrequited love? And like, that's fine. But the character was written in such a way that it was almost pathetic to read about at times. I feel very bad for saying that, but that's kind of what I walked away with it feeling, was this main character was just pathetic. She didn't have a lot of agency outside of the fact that she just followed this guy around. At one point, she loses her job as his caretaker and ends up just I believe in the text it even said something like she just floated around aimlessly until she was given a job with him again. And it was like very little to her personality. So it just didn't hold the story well. There was a lot of pieces that I was very interested in, like the giant museum is a giant space tree. The alien races are insectoid and mushroom adjacent. Like, all of that was very cool. If we had read this story from any other perspective, I would have been very much a fan. but this really sad, love-obsessed person just did not give the story the powerful impact I think it deserved. And so it just wasn't a win for me. This isn't out yet. I don't think it comes out until like May or April. If it's something you're like unfamiliar with the reference material, you could try it. It's very short. You might enjoy it. Just for me, I want my main characters to have a little bit more personality, right? I want to see more, in my personal taste, I want to see more to them than, what's the phrase? Disaster main characters. I don't care for them. Sad main characters. Unless you give me a very good reason to care, I struggle with that type of character. But moving on, I read 2 more volumes on a happier note. Well, real quick, we'll touch on the fact I read 2 more volumes of Dragon Ball by Akira Toriyama. Very different feel than what I just talked about. This is the original series that Dragon Ball Z GT Super comes from, and this is young Goku here on the cover. These 2 volumes cover the first Budokai Tenkaichi tournament. I think I'm saying that right. And it's very fun. We see a lot of Master Roshi, and we see Yamcha again. Short hair Yamcha makes an appearance. Bulma is back briefly, and we see the Kamehameha used for the most ridiculous reasons. As I've said previously, this series is it's written in the 80s, potty humor, kind of pervy. But if you're okay with that, if you want something that calls back to that time, if you grew up watching this like I did, this is a fantastically fun read. It made me laugh out loud several times. It was lovely. I will continue to read these. I think there are 16 volumes in Dragon Ball, and then we're moving into the next series, and I am on volume 5 now, and I'm just going to keep reading them. I quite love them. Krillin is in it now. If you're a fan and you know who Krillin is, he is now in the book. And I forgot how much of a little snot he was. So I did read 3 and 4, loving them still. And I plan to continue. The next nonfiction that I read, this is in absolutely chaotic order, and I'm so sorry, but the next nonfiction I read was The Great Shadow by Susan Wise Bauer. This is a nonfiction book about sickness, illness, and how it has affected us as a society, as a people, as humans throughout time. This is a great, I think, introduction to medical nonfiction, medical history. I've read a few medical history books before. It's a topic that interests me. I'm not like obsessed with it, but I do pick it up from time to time, and this is a great introductory to that. A lot of this I had read before. I knew of Lister, I think his name was Lister, or List, the guy who was like, wash your hands. That guy. A lot of the very early stuff I am familiar with. So some of this was familiar and some of this was new. And I really enjoyed the way this author presented everything. When a new chapter would begin, a new topic, she would use a historical story and then a modern day story to kind of help the reader feel the impact of what she's talking about. For example, one of the later chapters, she starts the chapter talking about her own son getting scarlet fever and how he went to urgent care. He was able to get antibiotics very quickly and treat it, and it was a non-issue. And then she went back and she gave a historical story based on a woman who lost one son to scarlet fever because no one could cure it, and then like 5 or 6 years later lost her same son at the same age to the same disease, and they ended up blaming it on a small cap, like a hat that she had put on her first son, then put in a box after his death, and then pulled out to use with her second son when he was sick. Or I'm sorry, when he was cold, and then he ended up getting sick. And it's those stories that really helped to connect to what you're reading and understand what she's trying to tell us. Where was I? I had to field a phone call from my dad. There's a lot going on in my life, unfortunately, right now. So, The Great Shadow. Yes, she uses 2 different time periods to illustrate, modern day and what these diseases, their impact was like in history. It was well done. It's a great introduction to the topic. It's fascinating, the things she talks about, and how, honestly, I mean, it's very common sentiment. History is a circle, right? We repeat things, and for example, the vaccine, like fear and suspicion that people had during COVID, it's very similar to how people felt about a lot of vaccines in the early 1900s, that when things were coming out, like people fought against the polio vaccine, and look where we're at things like that. Like, there's a lot of circular paths in history, and you see this here as well. But a fantastic introduction to the topic. We're going to move on, because I honestly don't remember what all I said. I gave it a 5-star, and I really want to get my own copy of this for my shelf, is how much I liked it. So, moving on, let's talk about, I have like 3 or 4 more things. Enchanting the Fae Queen by Stephanie Burgess is the sequel to, what was the first one? I can't remember the name. It's the Queens of Villainy series. Hold on. It might be. It's not. I was going to say it might be on that shelf where I could see it. It's not. Wait, no. It used to be over there. It should be up here somewhere. And you know what? I still don't see it. That's okay. That's my bees. Enchanting the Fae Queen, back on topic. Whoa, I'm frazzled now. I really liked this first book. I thought it was fantastic, but this second book was not quite as strong for me, and I don't know maybe if it's when I read it that affected it, but this is about Lorelai, who in the first book is the, like, flighty, super, like, bubbly Fae Queen. She's half Fae. She's got a lot of Fae power. She teleports in and out of places. She sparkles everywhere. She literally sparkles everywhere she goes. She throws sparkles on people. Like, she's that kind of a person. And the gentleman that she ends up in this with is the Golden Beacon, and he is like the paladin, the guy who is stoic. He goes by the book, by the law, you know, does what is his duty and little else. He's very stern for a reason. And we get their histories and we get their lives. And these two have had for years this back and forth antagonistic relationship because they're on opposite sides of a war. He's working for the Emperor, who is very much not a nice guy, even though I think his name was Gerald. His actual name is Gerald. The Golden Beacon, he's a nice guy. He is just in this guy's army, and he grew up with him. You know, they're going different paths, but he doesn't realize it yet. He ends up trapped with Lorelai in the Fae realm, and they end up in a competition, a series of trials that they need to complete to get out, escape. They kind of get trapped into it for political reasons and so they're stuck working together, and they have this camaraderie that comes out of this like antagonistic relationship because it's, you know, back and forth. It was really good, but I don't know, I just, at the end of the book, everything about it was good. I enjoyed the setting, I enjoyed the trials, I liked the characters, but ultimately by the end of the book, I just kind of wished they had stayed friends. Like, the chemistry of the romantic relationship didn't quite make it for me. Like, I was just like, oh, okay, all right. But I liked the back and forth of the friendship more. So it just didn't completely sell me on the romantic relationship. I'm going to continue the series. I really want to see the Ice Queen, the Elsa-esque queen. Her story is the 3rd book. I think it's going to be the last book, and she is going to have a sapphic romance. I'm very excited for that because it's looking like she's going to have a romance with the Emperor's sister, who is the high priest of the religion for that empire. Fingers crossed. I'm very excited for that one, but it doesn't come out till 2027. But this one was good. It just wasn't as good for me as the first book. The next one that wasn't great for me, another Dollywood book though, Once Upon a Time in Dollywood by Ashley Jordan. Right out of the gate, I can tell you in the first few chapters, this deals very heavily with depression, miscarriage, and child loss. So if you're not prepared for that, do not read this. It's just within the first couple pages, she's talking about a miscarriage, and she is very much depressed. This is about a woman who she's suffered 2 miscarriages, and when she was a teenager, she was forced to give up a baby by her parents because they didn't want her to live as a teen mother. She was 16 or 17 when she had the baby. So she's grappling both with the loss of her baby from teenage years and these 2 miscarriages. She leaves her fiance, says, I'm not happy, and she moves down to her grandmother's cabin in Sevierville, which is Dollywood country. And it's like out in the woods, like out on a country road. And she is going to move in there, and she's going to recover and write because she's a playwright. She has a neighbor who is also struggling with some child-related stuff. He is fighting his ex-wife, who is not the greatest person. She's not the worst, but he's dealing with a custody battle with her and getting over her and dealing with what she did to him, which was cheating on him and then being very unreliable and stuff with custody. Like, he's trying to get full custody. The 2 of them meet. There is sparks, attraction, and, you know, we go from there to contemporary romance. I really liked the overall story and the characters I found interesting. They were fascinating to me. They were very well done. They were flawed. They weren't perfect. It was well done in that way, but I had some trouble with the way the men were represented in this. We don't get very many male characters in this. It's mainly our male main character, our male MC, our love interest, and then our female main character's fiance and her dad. Both of them, so 2 out of 3, when it comes to the loss of a child. So for the fiance, it was the miscarriages, and for the dad, it was her giving up her son as a teenager. Both of them were cold, didn't care, and in a couple of cases, just straight up walked out on her. Like, her dad at the end of the novel does that. She is confronting her parents at the climax about what they made her do with that baby. And up until this point, the dad is like the good parent. He's the parent you like because he's the parent that's like smiling and happy, and he talks to her and he tries to help her. He makes an abrupt personality shift out of left field and says, I won't talk about this anymore, blah, 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 blah. And he just calls her hysterical and walks off. Meanwhile, the fiance is like, yeah, I should have helped you better with your depression over the loss of the children, but what was I supposed to do? Like, he didn't care that his fiance had 2 miscarriages. He just didn't seem to care. He's like, why is she depressed all the time? I don't get it. And this bothered me because I have a lot of male friends who have suffered losses in their lives when it comes to miscarriages. And my husband is one of them. We've had miscarriages. We've had stillbirth. I have seen men struggle with the loss of a child at that level, like a miscarriage and stillbirth before. Multiple men. And this is not how they handle it. And this feels like it perpetuates a very toxic stereotype. And I really didn't like that because that's a sensitive topic for me, obviously. So I had problems with that. I didn't care for that. I feel like that really perpetuates this myth, the stereotype that men don't care about that sort of thing or men handle it better. That is absolutely not the case. I have seen a lot of men struggle very profoundly with that sort of thing. Like, just because they're not the ones that miscarry the child doesn't mean they don't feel something about it, right? So I really, really, really had a problem with that. So I ended up giving this like a 3.5. It didn't work for me. I felt like it had a really toxic trope in it. And I run into this sometimes with these contemporary romances, which is, I think, is why so many of them don't work. This one reminds me very much of another one I read a couple of years ago where one of the female characters was like actively beating her boyfriend, fiance, and they were laughing it off like it was a joke. And I was like, that's not funny at all. So I don't know. I can't say recommend it for that fact, but if that doesn't bother you, maybe you'll be all right with it. I did like it at first a lot. They dropped Food City is a very common grocery store around here. There's like 3 in my immediate area. Talking about Food City, I don't ever see those in books. That was fun. And I will argue with the main character that their cake might be better than Trader Joe's. It's very good. So, it had its highlights, but that specific sensitive topic really bothered me. Moving on, I finished 2 more books, 2 arcs. One I have a physical copy of from Saga Press, and that is All That We See or Seem by Ken Liu. This I was super excited about, but ultimately was kind of also a bummer. And I 100% think I was reading this the Monday that things went south for my family, and I think that this might have been impacted by that to some degree, but I also think it just probably wasn't fated to work out for me anyway. This is about Julia Z, who is a hacker who is trying to lay low after a very hard early life, and she gets caught up when a man comes to her door and says, my wife is missing. She is a dream artist. She can meld people's dreams together to make this like big community dream, and she's gone missing, and I need to figure out where she has gone and what's happened to her because I'm the main suspect. Julia at first is like, I don't want to help you, but then she gets caught up in it because yes, his wife is missing, but also his wife might have had blackmail or some information about this nefarious figure called the Prince. And this is like in the future a bit. This is a sci-fi mystery thriller. At least that's what it was billed as. There is a mystery. There is some science fiction, but it's not thrilling. There's very little thrilling about this. It moves kind of slow. Julia gets caught up with him as they try to figure out what has happened to his wife. We get to see some very interesting ideas for like technology. That's the word I want. So the idea of the shared dream using neural implants, how AI can develop into these things that he called egoliths, where it's basically like a copy of an artist. It doesn't quite make the same work, but like a reproduction of the work, and how this has been used by some artists to make reproductions of paintings, and how it uses the same style as its master, as its source, but it's not quite the same, and people notice that sort of thing. It brought up an interesting discussion. And at the end, the discussion of content creators and like content farms. That was all interesting, but it just didn't quite connect. It wasn't thrilling. I found it quite boring in a few places. Some things I really enjoyed, but some things I didn't. So this was just a 3.5 for me. It wasn't a huge win, but it wasn't a huge loss. If you go in expecting a mystery, not a thriller, you're going to have a lot more fun with this. It's got short and snappy segments to it too, so it makes for a little bit of a quick read. So just go in knowing it's a little slower than you might expect, because I expected it to be a lot quicker, but it was slow. That's okay. Not everything, clearly, is going to work for me. And the final thing I read, the first book that I read in 2026 is The Cypern. Cypern? I think that's how you would say that, by Mercedes Lackey. This is a Elemental Masters book, and this is book 18. I had to think about it. This is book 18 in the Elemental Masters book. And these books, on the whole, can be read as standalones. They move forward in time. So right now we're in like the Regency Victorian era. You're actually sitting on a stack of them that I got for Christmas. They're used library books. But you're sitting on a stack of them, two of which are the Sherlock Holmes ones. So, and usually these are retellings of something like Sherlock Holmes. This was a retelling of The Wild Swan, which is I think it's a Grimm's tale or a Hans Christian Andersen tale, but a young girl who has to save her however many brothers from a curse that turns them to swans. And this would have been a 5-star. This would have been a 5-star read for me. I really liked it. I love Mercedes Lackey as a writer. I have grown up reading her books. We've talked about this before. I love Mercedes Lackey. If you want to know what happens in this book, read the back of it. I was reading this book, and I read the blurb. First paragraph tells you that the main character has 7 brothers, and 7? 6? She has a bunch of brothers. I think it's 7. I lost count after a point. And her father was married. Her mother ran off. You find out she was a swan maiden in the first chapter, and she left the children with the father. The father remarries a stepmother. Obviously, this is an evil stepmother because it's a fairy tale retelling. And in the first paragraph of the blurb, it will tell you her brothers fall into a lake while skating, but they get free by turning into swans because of their swan mother's heritage. And then her evil stepmother casts them away, and they can't come back, and then she has to figure out how to save them. Listen, fam. Listen. This happened, this scene where the swan thing happened, 67%. I checked my Kindle. I showed it to my husband. I said, read the blurb. He did. I said, look, this is the scene where the brothers fall in the water and turn to swans. 67%. 67%. So the 67%, we're just reading about these kids in this house, which would have been fine because it's billed as cozy. It would have been fine. But instead, I spent the whole book going, where's the skates? Ooh, they just got skates. When are they going to go skate? When are they going to go skate? When are they going to go skate? Oh, they went skating. When's the dad going to die? Because the next paragraph tells you what happens. There's 3 more paragraphs in that blurb. It tells you what happens in the rest of the book. The whole book was spoiled. It's been so long since I've had that happen that I was just taken aback. I always read the blurbs. I skim them at the very least. But dang, whoever wrote the blurb on this maybe needs to rewrite the blurb on it. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe the entire book is given away in the blurb. There's like one character we didn't know about from the blurb, and he shows up 2 or 3 times before the very end of the book. So I liked this. Don't read the blurb. Don't read any more than what I've told you, and know that what I told you doesn't happen till later in the book, and then just be surprised for the rest of it and enjoy the ride till then, because that's what all you can do. Okay? All right. What? Oh, frustration station is me. That's what I feel so frustrated. It is the 4th. It's the 4th. This video is probably going to go up on Friday. And yeah, I'm hoping that I will have some better reads in the next few weeks. I need to have some better reads in the next few weeks. I'm currently reading, I think it's Silver and Blood, I think is the name of it. And I actually really like it so far. So, you know, fingers crossed that that stays consistent. I have a Aardvark book coming. And then I plan on reading more Dragon Ball soon. So that's it. That's kind of my plans. I talked about it in another video, a very short video, if it's not already up on the channel. If it is, I will link it down below. My goals for this year are simply to read and enjoy what I read and just to make it through 2026 because the end of 2025 has been terrible to me. So that is it. That's everything that I have read over the holidays. A little bit of what I am reading and plan to read. Let me know. Please tell me that y'all have read better things, that you had a good holiday, what is going on. And I will talk to you guys again soon, hopefully next week. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. Bye.